Have you ever heard the phrase vùng kinh tế mới, the new economic zones? Probably not if you were born after the 19th, but for those who came before, the term wasn't just something they heard, they lived it. It meant leaving the familiar behind to build a new life from scratch in a remote, dry land where the soil was rich but the road was rough. Hi friends, it's me again, Chi from Mesame. Today I want to tell you the story of a woman with a heart of quiet strength, someone who followed her husband to the wild highlands of Dagenham and have turned an overgrown patch of mountain into a life. It begins on a stifling summer night in a sleepy riverside village in the Mekong Delta, the kind of heat that clings to your skin even at midnight. You'd think sitting outside may help, but the mosquitoes vicious, so the only real solution, crawl under the net, lie still, and sweat. That's exactly what Middleton and Miss One was doing, tossing, turning, half asleep, half worried about what came next. A few weeks earlier, Middleton had helped his sister's family move up to a region people called Đồng Rừng, not an actual place on the map, just a nickname for all those vaguely flat lands hidden in the thick jungles of the central highlands. Đắk Lắk, Lâm Đồng, Đắk Nông, same idea. Cheap land, big dreams, hard work. Up there, land was plenty. The only shortage was manpower. In the Delta, by contrast, it was crowded and competitive. You save for years and still not have enough to buy a single rice field. The cheapest land there was 2 gold taels, but in the highlands, for the price of 1 gold tael, you could own 5 plots of farmland. And that's when the couple started to dream. A small house, a piece of land they could call their own, not another year stuck in a teacher dorm, borrowing space and borrowing time. The job transfer wasn't the problem. Up there, they needed teacher badly, but money, that was the catch. They had saved about 1 gold tael, enough to buy 5 plots, but buying land was just step 1. They still need money to dig a well, build a hut, and survive until the first harvest. They knew no help was coming. Everyone around them was in the same boat, newly arrived, barely afloat. But Middleton was determined, and Mrs. One, she just quietly nodded, like she always did, not because she chased a big dream, but because she believed in her husband. And that was enough. That summer of 1998, with 2 little kids in tow, they packed up their lives and moved. Their new home was a patch of weeds and red mud, just 500 meters off the national highway. But when it rained, those 500 meters turned into a swampy disaster zone. The grass stood taller than their heads, and the first challenge was simply clearing it enough to stand. They borrowed tools, borrowed wood, borrowed help from friends of friends. Every nail, every plank, every beam were a patchwork effort. But a few months in, they had it, their own tiny wooden home. Before they could even celebrate the first chapel came, rust-covered skin, red blotches, kids crying through the night. Turns out, the wooden floorboards were hiding a secret army of caterpillars, harmless looking but fierce, and when the family tries to sleep, they were crawling everywhere. Much worse than the mosquitoes back home. They fixed that. Then came the next problem, water. Without water, there would be no crops, no food, no life. Carrying buckets from the streams wasn't sustainable. So with the last of their borrowed money, they dug a well. The water that came up, clear, sweet, so pure it didn't need filtering. Just boiled some white tea leaves, and the brew stayed green and fresh. A small miracle, but miracle done by bills. And electricity? Not yet. At night, they lit oil lamps and set story by flickering flame. Eventually, they borrowed a generator, then strung up their own electrical lines. The comforts came slowly, one by one, like reward after each trial. But that's the later story. For now, just having a flickering flame for dinner was enough. Rice was still a big concern. Luckily, they had kind relatives who let them buy food on credit. Finally, after a month of waiting, both husbands and wife were officially placed at local schools. Their salaries had paid off the food debt and buy the first coffee saplings. The rest of the day, they were out in the field, digging, planting, watering, learning everything from scratch. How deep should the hole be? How far apart should the trees go? How do you prune without hurting the plant? No YouTube tutorials, no books, just neighbors and trial and error. 3 years later, the first bitter cherries of coffee appeared. 5 years in, they began to make enough to call it stable. They paid off all debt, bought a dream motorbike using a small teacher's loan. No more struggling up hills with a bicycle. The motorbike was the game changer. Easier to bring coffee, fertilizer, even neighbors for a ride. And with that, they finally had a moment to breathe. They roasted their own coffee, sipped the first cups brewed from trees they planted with their own hands. The bitterness of the coffee brought tears, not because of taste, just because of memory. Every sip was a reminder of sleepless nights, itchy skin, aching backs, and one unwavering belief: we get there. But life's a long story, and coffee wasn't the end. Some years were good, others not. When coffee prices dipped and bets rose, they turned to pepper, and when pepper wilted in the markets, they pivoted again, this time to durian. Yes, durian, the king of fruits, the king of smell. They kept a few pepper trees for memory's sake, a few coffee buses for old times, but it was durian that carried them through. Their patch wasn't huge, not enough to make them rich, but rich were never the goal. They had enough to live, enough to share, and that to them was wealth. Years passed. The hardship blurred into funny memories, like that early story about durians. Someone once said, "Poor me, I planted this new variety, but the fruits all dropped before ripening. Such a waste." Later on, they found out the good ones are the dropped ones, and everyone laughed through the frustration. But one thing Middleton never forgot, never could, was this. The best decision of my life wasn't buying land, it was marrying her. The woman who followed him up a mountain with 2 kids and 0 complaints. The one who carried water and cooked meals while nursing rashes and deaths. The one who planted a tree beside him, quiet, steady, always there. She didn't chase sweet things, she made them.
Chúng ta đoàn áo vải, sống cuộc đời rừng núi với nay, đồng xanh ta thiếu đất cày, nghe rừng lắm đất lên đây với rừng. Sáng ngày ta góp sức chung, vun từng luống đất, cuốc từng gốc cây. Đường xa ta tới đây, trên đồi cây khát nắng, giữa 2 dòng suối vắng, đoàn ta vui cấy cày. Bàn tay lao động, ta xây cuộc sống, trên vùng đất khô, bàn tay cần cù mặc dù nắng cháy, khoai trồng thắm rẫy, lúa cấy xanh rừng. Hết khoai ta lại gieo vừng, không cho đất nghỉ, không ngừng tay ta, bàn tay ta làm nên tất cả. Có sức người sỏi đá cũng thành cơm. Đấy.